So pretty quickly, the Western European countries, mainly England, France, and Spain, but also to a smaller degree, Portugal and the Netherlands, establish a full dominance over the Americas. By the beginning of the 15th century, the map of their colonial empires looks something like this. And for right now, ignore what you see in Africa and Southeast Asia. In the next unit on global trade, we'll talk about the efforts by Europeans to colonize those areas as well. But in the beginning, by the beginning of 1700, close to 60% of all of the land in the Americas is under the control of a foreign government. Okay. Now, this begs the question, how does one do this? Because I mean, the big gunpowder empires of the 15th century, Qing China, the Mughals, the Ottomans, their direct control over the land is pretty simple to understand. They expand their armies, incorporate new territory, and that's that. Um, but the colonial empires in the Americas are a bit more complicated because you have five states in Western Europe who are not very large states. Spain and France being the largest, but they're still dwarfed by these other gunpowder empires. So, how do these small states in Western Europe control such enormous amounts of land so far from their power base? Um, the Atlantic Ocean, although it's smaller than the Pacific, I mean, you're still looking at, even at the closest point, a journey of about 1,900 miles. With the technology of the time, this journey across the Atlantic can still take 2 or 3 months, depending upon weather and winds. So, how do these Western European states establish such control over so much land from so far away? So, politically, most of these countries are controlled by a royal governor, someone who is hand chosen by the crown back in Europe and answers directly and only to them, giving them somewhat absolute power in the colonies. Now, one of the ways that they enforce this control is that the colonies are ruled by the mother country, but they are not seen as part of the actual homeland itself. So, New Spain, New France, New England, New Netherlands are all seen as property or possessions of the ruling family or the ruling class. Now, what this does is this allows the governments back in Europe to treat the people and the land in the Americas as property. Now, in some cases, this allows for a lot of abuse and a lot of corruption by the colonizers. Smuggling and piracy becomes a massive problem, but it also limits their rights and their status. If you live in the Americas, you are still subject to British rule or French rule or Spanish rule and laws. However, you are not seen as a citizen of those countries, and therefore you have no rights in those countries. You do not have the same rights as someone living in Madrid or Paris or London. Now, one of the byproducts of that is that in this system, because of the lack of direct control, the natives are kind of at the mercy of the colonists. And this leads to quite a bit of mistreatment on their part. But it also leads to the colonists themselves resisting any kind of outside control from Europe, because they aren't given the same rights and the same status as citizens in Europe. They feel as if they're entitled to at least a small portion of self rule. And many of them form local elected governments. They disobey royal orders. This is going to become a much bigger thing when we start to get to the American Revolution and then the Latin American revolutions later after that. However, politically is one thing. Economically, Europe devises a system that allows them, that is much more efficient in controlling their colonies than the royal governorship system. And what they do is they develop a system known as mercantilism, right? So mercantilism is based on the teachings of Adam Smith, who's a very famous Scottish economist. He writes a book known as The Wealth of Nations in the 17th century, and it becomes incredibly influential. And basically, what Smith says is that the prosperity of states is based on their ability to accumulate wealth, and specifically large stockpiles of precious metals, gold and silver bullion. And that the only way for Europeans to accomplish this, considering the geography of Europe, considering that Europe is the smallest of the continents, considering that they do not have access to the trade and the resources of the larger gunpowder empires, that they must go out and acquire colonies elsewhere in the world. Now, Smith always also says that in order for mercantilism or mercantile capitalism to work, the home country must maintain a favorable balance of trade, meaning that the mother country must be exporting more value than it is importing. And for that to take place, they've got to be able to exploit the natural resources and the raw materials of their colonies. So the majority of these colonies are set up in a way in which their sole purpose is to produce and export raw materials back to Western Europe, meaning that there's not a lot of industry that is established in many of these colonies. There's not a lot of businesses. There's not a lot of um, refined economic production. The majority of these colonies are set up in a manner where the land is to be used to produce raw materials or extract raw materials, and that is essentially it. No processing or no finishing of those materials are done. They're shipped back to Europe, where they're going to be processed and turned into finished goods there. Now, the way that Europeans are able to exploit this is by requiring that these raw materials be shipped to the mother country at fixed prices. And obviously, those fixed prices are set by the mother country, so they're going to be very low. Once those raw materials are sold, they are put onto either royal ships paid for by the crown themselves or onto the ships of what's known as trading companies. And in the next unit, we'll really start talking about, trading companies in detail. But basically, these trading companies are given a virtual monopoly over all goods moving in and out of the European colonies. So from the colonist point of view, not only are you required to produce raw materials to be sent back to the home country, you're not allowed to process them and turn them into your own finished goods. You also are required to sell them at fixed prices, not fixed by you, and you have to ship them on specific ships rather than being able to shop around and negotiate for the best price possible. Then, once those raw materials reach Western Europe, they are processed and turned into finished products, which are then put back onto royal ships or trading company ships, brought back to the Americas, and resold in the colonies at very high prices. Now, one would ask, well, why would the colonies agree to this? And the simple answer is they don't have a choice. The majority of the people in power in these colonies are put there by the government in Western Europe. They are appointed by the crown. So the decision making is very slanted towards benefiting Western Europe. Not only that, but if you live in the colonies and there's not a lot of manufacturing, there's not a lot of industry established in these colonies, then you're dependent upon those finished goods from Europe for your survival. Things like tools, furniture, books, weapons, etc. Right? Now, how does this enable Europeans to keep control over their colonies? Well, the main way in which it does that is that this generates massive wealth for the mother country, but it keeps the colonies poor and dependent upon the flow of goods, but also the flow of people, the flow of supplies, the flow of troops in order to protect and defend the colony itself. So this is a very one-sided relationship, and Europeans exploit the raw wealth of the Americas like crazy. Now, one of the other downsides of this mercantilist system in the long term is that because of the way that it's set up, where these colonies are designed to produce and extract natural resources, um, that means several things to the population of the colonies. Number one, it means that you have a very low rate of education in many of these colonies. Highly educated workers aren't a necessity for an economy that is built around growing sugarcane or growing tobacco or mining silver, any one of these different things, right? Also, because of the fact that there's very little industry and very little manufacturing that's set up in the colonies, you have a very small population of skilled workers. The majority of the population of the colonies works in some form of manual labor. Now, there are in the bigger cities and the urban areas professionals, lawyers, doctors, these kinds of things. But the overwhelming majority of the population, their entire life revolves around manual labor, the extraction of natural resources. So what you see after 100, 200, 300, 350 years of this exploitation is that now, even in 2017, a lot of places in the Americas are still playing catch up because of these disadvantages thanks to mercantilism, right? This chart kind of gives you a visual idea of exactly what we're talking about here. So this pie chart represents the exports of Venezuela by category in 2014. Now, obviously, these aren't exact numbers, but it's pretty clear from the chart that the economy of Venezuela, even now in modern times, is still overwhelmingly slanted towards the production and the extraction of raw materials. Okay. If you look at the chart, 94% of their exports are oil and minerals, meaning that these are raw goods that are being exported to other countries and then finished goods are having to be brought back into the country. So what this means, again, is that you still have essentially a mercantilist system, not by force, but by necessity in a lot of these former colonies in the Americas, right? This political cartoon probably goes even a step further in better explaining it. You can clearly see here the mother country bejeweled in all of her glory, right? Numerous rings, necklace, tiara, bracelets, etc. Not to mention that she is obviously well fed. She's a big woman, being served by three younger, obviously not as wealthy, obviously not having anywhere near the status, right? They're wearing maid uniforms, and they are serving up to her all of the wealth of the Americas, right? The gold and silver, the foodstuffs, the raw materials, right? So the clear difference here kind of explains not only the goal but the outcome of the mercantilist system.